When we read a book that is going to raise our level of understanding, we are going to be confused at some point. That's the whole point of reading a book that contains knowledge that we don't have, for us to be challenged and for us to be learning from the book. But this raises a problem that I'm sure you've experienced. When things get challenging or confusing or things just get too complicated, what are we supposed to do to keep moving forward? I want to focus on two options that you have. You ignore your confusion for the moment and you hope that your confusion will resolve itself, or maybe just won't be as important as the book proceeds. The other option is to stop and look things up. You don't know a word? Look it up. You don't understand a reference? Read a footnote. Some idea is unclear to you? Go to another source to figure it out. The question is, which option should you take? Before I talk about that, you might pause this video and ask yourself, well, what do I do when I'm reading and come across this kind of problem? Do you stop to look things up? Do you keep reading? Do you just give up on reading the book entirely? The nature of the situation, I think, determines what the right thing to do is. Suppose you are reading a Shakespeare play, and right away you run into a word or a phrase that you don't understand. And so you go to the footnotes or the commentaries and, it's an allusion to the Greek myth of such and such, which you also don't know. So then you have to go to the Greek myth and read about that, which might have other stuff you don't know, and then you have to look that stuff up, of course. Now, perhaps eventually you make your way back to the play and try to pick up where you left off. So here you took the look things up option, and I think it was probably a mistake. With a Shakespeare play, looking things up all the time means starting and stopping and starting and stopping and starting and stopping and starting and stopping all the time. But if you think about it, this kind of ruins the experience of the play. Just like with plays, a lot of books rely on continuity from one part to the next. Having that continuity is an important part of understanding the nature of the book as a whole, even if we miss certain references. Let's take a different example. You're reading an introductory chemistry book and you come across Dalton's postulates regarding atomic theory, and you're having some trouble understanding what they are. Maybe the textbook isn't describing it that well, but for whatever reason, you're just not getting it. We're back to our decision again. Keep reading or stop to look things up. If we go with keep reading, we might run into some problems, because later on in this textbook, it's going to be building off of Dalton's postulates and complicating them and even contradicting them at some point. So it's not quite the same as looking up a reference in a Shakespeare play. Here, we don't understand a fundamental concept that the rest of the book will rely on and will build off of. There's actually two important differences that we should consider between these two examples. One is the difference between a reference to something and a concept that the book is directly trying to teach. By reference, I mean something like blah, 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 which is also similar to how Mill defined freedom in the first part of On Liberty. Do you know how Mill defined whatever it is the author's talking about in On Liberty? Maybe not. If you do know the reference, the clause might enrich your understanding. But if you don't know the reference, you can still understand basically what the author is saying. Even if we don't understand an allusion or a particular word in a particular scene in Hamlet, we still might understand that Hamlet is angry or insane or depressed. With the Dalton's postulates example, we're missing a larger conceptual issue. It's not just an enriching detail, it's one of the fundamental ideas that the book is trying to convey. The distinction that I'm trying to make here is not necessarily a perfect one, because sometimes getting a reference or understanding a word's meaning might completely change how you interpret what's being said. But I still think it's a worthwhile distinction to make. The second difference between these examples is whether or not the work will build off of the thing that you don't understand or not. If the chemistry book is made up of 12 largely independent and separate chapters that don't require any other prior knowledge to understand, then, it might be okay to keep reading and skip the parts we don't understand for now, and maybe we'll understand those better later. That's generally not the case in most science and math textbooks, which tend to start with simpler ideas and build up to more complex ideas, but there also tends to be little offshoots and hanging chapters that might be less important to understanding the main points. In a lot of cases, getting the whole story first is important. It helps to get a sense of the plot of Hamlet and what each character is struggling with. And often that can only happen by reading the book through first, or maybe doing a little prep work and then reading the book through. So this decision about what to do when you don't understand something depends on what it is you don't understand. That is, whether it's an essential concept that's being taught, or whether it's just an enriching detail that would enhance your reading, but not fundamentally change your understanding of what's being said. And it depends on the structure of the thing you're reading. Whether the thing that you don't understand is essential to understanding the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. But if we're trying to really learn from a book, the initial decision that we make probably won't be the last one. We can actually choose both. On an initial reading, we might skip something, but decide to look it up later. Right? We can take note of the fact that we don't get this reference or that there's some lingering questions. Or we can look up something right away, but instead of trying to pick up where we left off, we can actually go back a little ways to try to regain that sense of continuity. Generally speaking, I think it's good to stick with the book, to fight to find answers through more reading, because I think this helps to develop good reading skills. But it's a dynamic process that you can only get better at through practice. If you're into this kind of discussion and you like my content, you should really consider joining my learning community. We have students, teachers, and lifelong learners coming together talking about how to learn more effectively. Plus, you'll see tons more content from me there, as well as getting early access to YouTube videos like this one. There is a link in the pinned comment below. If I don't see you there, I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.